Mic check. 1, 2. Once again, in the spirit of testing our equipment and making sure that all is well as we finally put finishing touches for the commencement of proceedings right here at the Convocation Arena, let me apologize on behalf of the registrar and other members of the university for starting or for about to start the convocation at 11. You may well recall that in your invitation cards, it reads 10 o'clock, but then the convocation lecture is actually paid for 11. So we apologize for that mix-up. And this is to bring to our attention also that that exactly around 5 minutes to 11, the Vice Chancellor's procession will file in, and that will signal the official beginning of activities here for the 11th convocation ceremony. Meanwhile, let me quickly draw to our attention that today's convocation lecture will be handled or delivered by no other than the Director of Institute for Development Studies, Faculty of Social Sciences, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, in person of Professor Osita Ogu, OON. So while we are arranging this and while we are thinking of starting the business in no too distant time from now, let me admonish our graduates who are seated at the other pavilion there to please come to the grandstand and occupy the seats from the back. The convocation lecture is actually for you, so at least for camera aesthetics, we would want you to please come and occupy the seats here. At the pavilion, at the main pavilion. So our graduates who are seated, your friends and well-wishers, please move from where you are to the main pavilion. Ready? We are having some very senior officers seated. And to our friends, colleagues, and other graduates who are joining us from all over the country, this is especially welcoming you all to the Convocation Arena of the National Open University of Nigeria. I'm sure a lot of us are aware that this ceremony is a blended one, meaning it is taking place here and simultaneously on air across all the study centers, over 100 of them in the country. So very soon, like I said, I want to show you again that the convocation lecture will begin in earnest. The convocation lecturer himself is already around in the office of the Vice Chancellor. All the distinguished special guests are already around, just waiting for the right time for them to file in, and the business of the convocation will begin. Once again, thank you for your kind patience and attention, and in a very short while, the business will begin.
J'aimerais bien savoir pourquoi il y a tant de divisions dans les couples, pourquoi il y a tant de divorces. Quand deux personnes qui se sont jurées amour, fidélité et tout, se retrouvent à se donner des coups de poing, ça fait si c'est regrettable. Je me rappelle ce jour où j'ai dit à maman, je vais bientôt me marier. Et de l'autre côté du téléphone, je pouvais entendre maman avec un sourire.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's with high sense of delight I welcome you all to this Convocation Arena today for the 11th Convocation ceremony commencing today. Distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, the main pavilion of the Convocation Arena is gradually taking shape, and the business we are gathered here for is about to roll. But before we roll the dice, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, may I kindly bring to your notice that here joining us for this very special and wonderful event is no other but the Pro-Chancellor and Chairman Council of the National Open University of Nigeria, distinguished Emeritus Professor Peter Okebukola, OFR, who is leading other council members and other distinguished dignitaries here for this 11th Convocation Lecture. Distinguished invited guests, it's my pleasure as well to bring to your notice that we feel highly honored and privileged to have two other council members of the university joining us for this wonderful event. Three of them joining us. In due course, I will let you know who they are, but without losing eyes on the ball, let me also bring to your notice that two of the former vice-chancellors who labored tirelessly to bring this university to what it is today are here with us today. Need I forget to remind you that Professor Vincent Ado Tenebe and of course Professor Abdallah Uba Ademu are all here. Deans, directors, and other senior officers of the universities are also here. May I also bring to our notice expressly that the wife of the Convocation Lecturer is also here with us, and that is to put paid to whether or not the Convocation Lecturer will be here. He will be here live. So, in a brief moment from now, the Vice-Chancellor's procession will file into the Convocation Arena. We'll let you know in due course how that will play out. But for now, let me recognize the arrival of the Deputy Executive Secretary, NUC, Dr. Chris Miyaki, who is joining us here. Help me to welcome him with a thunderous round of applause. May we all rise for the Vice-Chancellor's procession, please.
deans of the faculties that are here and directors of academic institutes. As has just been described, my predecessors in office, the order of Professor Vincent, just recently the Vice Chancellor of Taraba State University. You are welcome, and not the least, Professor Abdallah Uba Adamu. Invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very important day in the annals of our university, the National Open University of Nigeria. And we are gathered here once again to do the normal ritual, which is to listen to one of the contemporary issues that we have presently in the country. The title of the presentation that we are going to listen to is the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the Challenge of Poverty Reduction in Nigeria. When I first had this title, my immediate response is to go to the delivery mode that we at this university are deploying. And I could see a relevance that many of us who are gathered here may not have appreciated this, that we are indeed in the fourth industrial revolution. And I'm sure the speaker, I haven't read his lecture, will take us through the various landmarks and milestones that made up the respective revolutions that we have, and end at the fourth industrial revolution. That is, we don't need to think very far. There is hardly any town in this country now that you wouldn't have what we refer to as a computer village. And the computer village does nothing to us apart from providing services. And who are the people that are providing the services? They are human beings. And you could just imagine if these services are not there to be provided, and the amount and the volume of the human beings, persons, both men and ladies, how it should have been in terms of being able to maintain a sustainable income. And that is why this topic is especially wonderful. Because what it does is it addresses the contemporary issues that we have in this country. And it also means that if we have not been doing enough, this might be a wake-up call after we have listened to him. So I can't wait, and I assure you too can't wait, with just a few things that I've said, to be able to listen to this wonderful man to present his lecture to us. I want to welcome you heartily to National Open University of Nigeria for those who are just coming for the first time, and to wish you a very pleasant stay. If you are here just for this lecture, I'm seizing the opportunity to invite you tomorrow for the convocation proper, which are also held both in this arena. The arena, as you see, it's very hairy, and even if the protocol, the COVID-19 protocols are there, we are grateful for the wonderful sunlight that nature has provided for us. Thank you very much for your presence, and I wish you a very pleasant listening. Thank you.
There can be no better assurance that you will take home and sleep with your two eyes closed than the assurance given by the Vice Chancellor of the National Open University of Nigeria, Professor Olufemi Peters, than for you to sit here, relax, and enjoy your stay at the National Open University of Nigeria. Well, you heard him clearly said that the lecture today will be deconstructed by Professor Osita Ogbu, OON. Aside just knowing him as the Director, Institute for Development Studies, Faculty of Social Sciences, University of Nigeria in Nsukka, who is this distinguished scholar? May I at this moment invite the school orator to give us a slice of who this accomplished academic is. Let me call on Professor Christine Ofulwe for the citation of this convocation lecturer.
The chairman of this occasion and Vice Chancellor of National University of Nigeria, Professor Olufemi Peters, the Pro-Chancellor and members of Council, the NUC Executive Secretary, represented by Dr. Chris Miyaki, invited guest speaker, principal officers of this university, members of Senate, former Vice Chancellors of this university, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a privilege for me to read the citation for Professor Osita Ogbu. May I please ask Professor Osita to rise? Thank you. Vice Chancellor, sir, our guest speaker, Professor Osita Ogbu, OON, is a renowned economist and development expert. He is a professor of economics, a fellow of the Nigeria Academy of Education, and a leading figure on Africa's developmental issues. Until recently, he was director, Institute for Development Studies at the University of Nsukka. Born in Onitsha in 1957, he hails from Ovuko in Igbo Eze South local government area of Enugu State, Nigeria. Professor Ogbu had his early education in Onitsha and Nsukka, respectively. He earned his undergraduate degree in economics from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, in 1979, and received his master's and PhD degrees in economics from Howard University, Washington, D.C., U.S. in 1984 and 1988, respectively. He also earned a certificate in corporate governance from Harvard University in 2009. An erudite scholar and accomplished researcher, Professor Ogbu was a research and teaching fellow at Howard University between 1983 and 1988. He served as a consultant research economist for the Africa region of the World Bank, Washington, D.C., between 1987 and 1991. He also worked as a senior program specialist at the International Development Research Center in Ottawa, Canada, and later at its regional office in Nairobi from 1991 to 2001. He was a visiting scholar with the Africa Growth Initiative at the prestigious Brookings Institute in Washington, D.C., 2012. Professor Ogbu has authored and edited several books and scholarly papers on a wide range of Africa's developmental issues and challenges. He is a much sought-after keynote speaker and has featured at many national and international events, including Africa Technology Policy Studies, International Development Research Center, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UNESCO advisory meetings, and AfriVest meetings. His views on science and technology policy and industrialization in Africa are well respected internationally. Professor Ogbu has held important leadership roles in both government and private sectors. He was the chief economic advisor to former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, and Minister of National Planning from 2005 to 2006. He was also the Executive Director of the African Technology Policy Studies Network, an international policy research institution based in Nairobi from 2001 to 2005. He is currently the Managing Director of the Africa Development Solutions International, a knowledge-based consulting firm based in Abuja, Nigeria. Professor Ogbu has served on boards and councils of several local and international organizations, including as chairman of the Governing Council of the Nigerian Institute of Social and Economic Research in Ibadan, the Council of the Enugu State University of Science and Technology, the boards of Main Street Bank, Afri Heritage Institution, Anchor Insurance, the Clementi Song Foundation, Africa Population and Health Research Center, Kenya, and Afri Invest, West Africa. In recognition of excellent leadership and his contributions to national development, Professor Sita Ogbu received the prestigious Nigerian National Honor Award Officer of the Order of the Niger, OON, in September 29, 2014. Vice Chancellor, sir, there is no doubt that Professor Ogbu's vast wealth of experience and accomplishments garnered over more than 25 years of work experience in over 40 countries with notable international institutions as well as government, which have shaped and formed his perspectives on Africa's developmental challenges, eminently qualifies him to speak on the theme for the university's 11th Convocation Lecture, the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the Challenge of Poverty Reduction in Nigeria. It is therefore my singular honor and privilege to present this accomplished intellectual, a strong advocate for Africa's developmental issues, and a champion of Africa's intellectual freedom and knowledge as our distinguished guest speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our esteemed guest speaker, Professor Osita Ogbu, to deliver the 11th Convocation Lecture of the National Open University of Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Mr. Chairman, Pro-Chancellor, members of Council, the Vice Chancellor of this university, the DVCs, the former VCs. I have just recognized Professor Abdallah because both of us were actually recipients of a traditional title. Professors, we have other titles. Mr. Vice Chancellor, I salute you. Other members of the administration, the bursar, the registrar, the DVCs, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First, let me say what an honor to have been asked to give your 11th Convocation Lecture. When Professor Uduma contacted me, I wasn't sure what to make of it. But if it is lecture and speaking and talking, I think it has become part of us that it's difficult to resist. And so, without knowing what I was getting myself into, I accepted. But not 1 week after, they started asking for the lecture, and I said, but I've not even written a word. So it is indeed an honor and privilege. The fourth industrial revolution and the challenge of poverty reduction in Nigeria. That's what I'll be speaking on. And I have learned over the years to motivate any assignment, including public lectures, by first answering the question, why? Why this theme and why this topic? For it is in answering this question that we can unearth the full ramifications of the subject matter and focus our solutions more humanely and sharply. It is always very clumsy to delve into the how, sometimes with a full range of solutions, without a grasp of the reasons why this is an issue in the first place. In answering the question of why, we are brought into the broader strategic realm of problem-solution interface, forcing us to go deeper in search of answers. In this specific case, why are we concerned about the fourth industrial revolution and how the gamut of innovations will affect our capacity to change the poverty trajectory of Nigeria? We care because the poor are our sisters, brothers, and relatives. We care because we hold the state responsible for the resolution of poverty using all legitimate means possible, including science, technology, and innovation, in whatever form it may present. The Open University of Nigeria cares because it sees itself as an important 21st century center of solutions in the best tradition of community service. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in the Federalist Papers number 62, James Madison, the fourth American president and one of the main architects of the American Constitution, wrote in 1778, and I quote, "A good government implies two things. First, fidelity to the object of governance, which is the happiness of the people." So that's the first, the happiness of the people. Secondly, a knowledge of the means by which that object can be best obtained. So even if you know the object, do you have the means? If you interpret this further, it will yield that the object of governance is to faithfully and continually guarantee the many freedoms that are associated with happiness. Freedom from disease, freedom from ignorance, freedom from homelessness, freedom from hunger, freedom from insecurity, freedom from unemployment, freedom from political exclusion, freedom from bad governance, and indeed, freedom from all forms of indignity and poverty for all its people. And note that while the calculus of happiness may differ, these freedoms are universally desired, not constricted by tribe, ethnicity, nationality, or gender. But James Madison did not stop there. The second, and in my view, the more important point in his statement, is the acknowledgement and recognition that it is not sufficient to understand the purpose of a good government, but to recognize that to resolve the many freedoms, in the words of Amartya Sen, the Nobel Prize winner in economics, you have to have the capacity, the intellect, the capability, the creativity, the competence, the pragmatism, and the political will. To have these attributes as per good government is simply to have access to those who possess them and can also easily appropriate the knowledge that are already in the public domain. But James Madison was not talking about any government. He was referring specifically to a good government. A government that realizes that the essence of the social contract between the government and the governed is to create a mindful society. In Professor Jeffrey Sachs, a Columbia University professor of economics and international development and the United Nations advisor on poverty issues, his elegant and innovative book, The Prize of Civilization, Economics and Ethics After the Fall. We are educated on the several dimensions of the mindful society, which I further elaborate. The first thing is the mindful of knowledge. The cultivation of education, which I think you guys are doing here at the Open University. And understanding that knowledge of science and expert knowledge is critical for societal survival and well-being. This also implies a recognition that specialized skills are required in the management of our economy, and that we must govern technology to serve a broad spectrum of society. Simply put, if you have a vision but do not know how to actualize it, get help. And not just any help, expert help. The second is the mindfulness of others. The exercise of compassion and the value of cooperation. Government and society being mindful of the poverty trap that have denied happiness to many of our citizens, and concerned about the many working poor amongst us, and finding ways of joining ingenuity to common purpose in fighting poverty and victims of death. In being mindful of others, in creating a just and egalitarian society, and withdrawn from the book by Professor Joshua Green, Moral Tribes, where he stated that according to the headers, maintaining a just society requires active redistribution. Otherwise, the rich uses the advantage to get richer, passing on their advantages to their children, who then begin life the big head start. Without redistribution of wealth, they say, our society will bifurcate into permanent classes of haves and have-nots. In Nigeria, we are already witnessing this moral quagmire. And this lecture is concerned that if nothing is done urgently to reverse the course, the fourth industrial revolution will further entrench division, widening the inequality. You know, someone was trying to crack a joke. There was a wedding somewhere in Nigeria, and they couldn't find a parking space for private jets. The number of private jets that went to that wedding, there was no space at the airport. Some had to fly to other airports and then come by road. But as you know, this is still a country battling with issues of malaria. Sometimes we had to get help from the Rotary Club to deal with polio, and so on and so forth. So you can understand the point being made here about mindful of others, about the widening inequality in our society. The danger with most technologies, including the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution, are that through access and control, they may lose their ethical and socializing character, with the benefits being appropriated by a few, widening once again the income gap. Yet we know that economies that are more equal are stronger, more peaceful. Those of you that have traveled would notice that when you go to the Scandinavian countries, where the gap between the rich and the poor are quite narrow, you find a stronger, more peaceful society. Travel to the US, you find that the income inequality is so high that society is less peaceful and security also becomes an issue. Inequality breeds all forms of societal ill, including insecurity. But more fundamentally, inequality weakens the basis for effective citizenship, and this is very important, especially if a group or class of people feels that the government and society are responsible for their exclusion. It is the absence of that responsible citizenship that you witness in issues like banditry, kidnapping, and other forms of insecurity that we are witnessing. For the fourth industrial revolution, technology to work for the benefit of all, raising the capability and productivity of the poor becomes urgent. Significant attention to public schools, vocational education, public health must be prioritized, because people are going to ask, what should we do? Well, there you have it. Anything that raises the capability, the productivity of the poor is where our attention should be addressed. Finally, in creating a mindful society, we are reminded of the very important statement by my late friend, and many people are going to wonder how he Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, in his book From the Third World to First, where he stated categorically in the true spirit of the same James Madison that they, meaning the government he led, set out to create a nation where everyone has a stake in it and an institution. This statement, two words, is really loaded. When you create a society where everyone has a stake in it, now and in the future, you are creating a nation. You are creating a strong society. Because even if the benefits of the technology in a particular period eludes me, not a good idea. And so I am going to work extremely hard to make sure that things work the way they ought to work. So it is important that one Israel was creating a nation where everyone. And what did Drake do? Inspiring in a very short time, he moved his country from a per capita income of $400 in 1959, so less than Nigeria, as we had $500 at that time in 1959, to $55,000 in 2013, and I think it's down close to 59,000 in 2020. But the Lee Yu statement is significant in its true deconstruct. It is at the heart of true citizenship and social contract. The fidelity of government to good governance and the demand of hard work, patriotism, and implied sacrifice for nation building from citizens. If you examine the state of affairs in our country, Nigeria, one cannot help but conclude that the nation has produced few stakeholders, with majority of her citizens looking in from outside. This is why the subject of this lecture is of critical importance. If the prosperity of the future would not once again elude the majority as the fourth industrial revolution unleashes its innovative, disruptive force. I would like to examine how science, technology, and innovation intersect with poverty reduction. When I was living in Nairobi and directing the African Technology Policy Studies Network, we collaborated with the university to demonstrate how science, how technology, how innovation is at the heart of everything we do. Because sometimes society thinks science is what scientists do. And scientists also think we must do science before we have technology. Yet you can create technology from technology. So that exhibition was to tell you, teach you that the food you eat, the clothes you're wearing, the glasses you're wearing, everything about you has science technology in it. Sometimes people tend to forget. And so it shouldn't be difficult to grasp the thing. Economic growth is fundamental to poverty reduction. Make no mistake about it. Economy must grow. For any significant reduction in the population of the poor in any country, the economy does not just grow, but must grow consistently over a long period of time. But we have also witnessed economic growth in Nigeria, albeit a short duration, without a concomitant reduction in poverty. In fact, poverty was rising at the same time when our economy was growing by about 6 to 7% per annum for about 6 years between 2005 and 2011. Calling into question the argument for a growth-only model for poverty reduction. The argument for a growth-centered model is clear, as the leading proponent, distinguished Professor Jagdish Bhagwati, stated. Growth will pull the poor into gainful employment, thereby helping to lift them out of poverty, and that higher incomes will help them to increase their personal spending on health and education. In a paper I published while at Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C. as a visiting scholar towards inclusive growth in Nigeria, I provided a counter-narrative for the case of Nigeria. I made the following points. Growth is necessary, but not a sufficient condition for poverty reduction. Of critical importance is the source of the economic growth. At the time we were referring to, our growth was driven largely by the rising oil prices. The oil industry in Nigeria has low employment, economy-wide and technology spillover effects, because the petrochemical value chain with higher value added has not been developed. So the oil industry itself is an isolated industry, very little employment and economy-wide impact. And as a matter of fact, I think those who set up the Petroleum Technology Development Fund knew about this. Because one thing I say about Nigeria is that I don't think there is any institution we have not thought of. The question is, has the institution performed in accordance with the objectives which they were set up? That's really fundamental what the issues are. So if the PTDF and others were in essence doing, working according to mandate, I think things would have been slightly different. The second point you make about oil is that many may not know that we are actually in another oil boom, even though it's not a boom for us. Because the price of oil is rising in the international market, and we should be smiling to the bank. But incidentally, because we are also an importer of oil, finished products, we are suffering the advantage of a rising price of oil. This is the quagmire that finds itself in. The agricultural sector, contributing about 50% of non-oil GDP at that time, has not raised the income and access of the poor because it is largely subsistence, low tech, low productivity, lacking in specialization, scale up, and commercialization. As net purchasers of food, inflation ate deep into the cost of farmers, preventing them from spending on their health and the education of their children. The service sector, a strong contributor to the gross domestic product, has a narrow wage employment base. I make two additional important points. That the absence of a robust manufacturing sector was a singular most important factor in explaining the absence of inclusive growth. No country has successfully lifted millions out of poverty without a large manufacturing sector. It is the sector with a significant technological spillover, linked with other sectors of the economy, huge wage employment base, and higher incomes from higher productivity. It is also the sector where industrial and technological upgrading occurs, key to structural change and sustained economic growth and hence poverty reduction. In essence, when economic growth is from a growing manufacturing sector, that growth is likely to be inclusive and poverty reducing, especially if it is characterized by huge labor demand. Unfortunately, our economy has not diversified into manufacturing. Its contribution to GDP is still 12% compared to that of emerging economies of between 20 to 30% with rising productivity. Nigeria's performance is largely due to government's misunderstanding of its role in assisting incipient entrepreneurs in overcoming the cost of infrastructural deficits and risks associated with what we call first mover disadvantages. Added to this is the problems with of our federalism, where the states do not serve as engines of national prosperity or centers for policy and economic innovation, and are not held accountable for the poverty or unemployment rates in their states. I saw governors a few days ago assembled somewhere saying poverty rate has gone up, this has gone up, and I'm wondering, your governors shouldn't people be asking you why is poverty rate high in your own state? Why is unemployment high in your own state? Why is everything about federal? We have state governors. They must be held accountable when poverty is rising in their states. But they don't see it that way. From the foregoing, it is clear that I'm a proponent of a manufacturing sector induced economic growth. Sustained economic growth, irrespective of source, is driven by a consistent increase in productivity. And productivity is largely driven by technology and innovation. If any nation wants to reduce the population of her citizens that are poor, it must invest or create policies that encourage the use of technology to increase the productivity of her citizens. It is increased productivity that raises income and access of the poor. Agriculture and manufacturing are two critical sectors in Nigeria where technology-induced productivity rise will help lift many people out of poverty. The important question before us is whether the emerging technology and innovation under the fourth industrial revolution would, given our socio-economic and political context, enhance the productivity of the poor or diminish it? And how may the nation prepare to take advantage of this innovative force in the face of our poor human capital, low skill, and low wage workforce? I would like us to take a look at the fourth industrial revolution per se and the future of work. Throughout history, there have been three industrial revolutions corresponding to major technological discoveries and innovations that transformed the economic processes and improved the productivity of workers and their standard of living. The first revolution, around 1750 to 1850, witnessed mechanization of industry, mechanization of factory system, specialization and division of labor, development of machine tools, extraction of coal, steam engine, manufacturing of railroads. The second one, around 1850 to 1914, was marked by the discovery and use of electricity, gas and oil, telegraph, telephone. The third revolution, the digitization revolution in the late 1900s, was marked by the spread of use of computers and electronics, the invention of internet, biotechnology, nuclear power, the automation of entire production processes. The technologies of the first and second industrial revolutions were biased towards lower skilled workers. They brought millions of unskilled workers into factories, put skilled artisans such as blacksmiths and hand weavers out of work. This was the beginning of prosperity in Britain and part of Europe and America. However, both the third and the fourth industrial revolutions embody skill-biased technological change. This is the difference. The first and second made low-skilled workers more productive and increased their skills, productivity, and incomes. The third and fourth are biased towards more skilled workers. And so we have to be very careful about this. The bias is further accentuated in the fourth industrial revolution as work becomes intensively intelligence-driven rather than labor-driven. And the governance and the practice of the workplace change dramatically. We already witnessed some of this. Now you can work from home as much as you can. If you examine the first and second industrial revolutions that seemingly ended in 1914, you will realize that Nigeria is still grappling with the key elements of that revolution. Revolution that ended in 1914. We are still trying to light Nigeria, feed Nigeria, industrialize Nigeria. Nigerians celebrate when a few kilometers of rail lines are laid. As stated earlier, our manufacturing is at best very low tech as we pay lip service to industrial diversification and treat it casually as a natural phenomenon. We think it is something that happens when it happens. No. Diversification must be caused to happen. And now the fourth industrial revolution is upon us. And we are likely to undergo another forced transition because of the state of our unpreparedness. But we must acknowledge the great advances we made in catching up with telecommunication technology, especially in the banking sector. But this catch-up, like in most technologies, represents only our capacity to use other people's technology, but not our ability to produce or reproduce them. All these things we do in banking, they are patented by others. We import them, we pay a lot for them. Even in our oil industry, there's a lot of money we pay because of the technology we use in drilling oil. If they deny us this technology, you can't even bring 1 liter of oil from the ground. If you look at the China model, for instance, you know, they had a growth of close to over 10% for more than 20, 25 years. Consistently, it's not grow and then you don't grow, consistently. And lifted over 100 million or so, 700 million people out of poverty. What did they do? They used what I call settled technology. The use and adaptation of technology that is already in the semi-public domain to increase their productivity and economic growth. We already know how to make an AC, air conditioner, a fan, in fact, even vehicles. You don't need to go into a laboratory to again research them. They are there, but you need to have the skills to adapt, to adopt, to modify. That's partly the Chinese model. And what did they do? In 1990, just the other day, the rate of poverty in China was 66.6%, lest we forget. And today, it's less than 2%. Just the other day. And know that in the words of some of these scholars, alleviating poverty is not the same as creating prosperity. So I think it's important if there are policymakers here. When you do trader money and so on, you might be alleviating poverty, but you are not creating prosperity. Let this decision be very clear. In order to prepare Nigeria for the fourth industrial revolution, you must appreciate the future of work and the skills required to be an active participant in the labor market of tomorrow through gainful employment. There are 4 main technologies driving the fourth industrial revolution: artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, and big data. In fact, I am very scared of machine learning. The advantage humans have over machine is that we are a learning being. We make mistakes and we adjust. Now, machine will be able to recognize its own mistake and correct itself. The human being is finished. No, this is what we are. Artificial intelligence, I can call for a vehicle without a driver, driverless vehicle. It comes to this institution, I tell the vehicle where I'm going, it drives me safely to my destination. So you begin to know and understand where the work of the future lies. So it is artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, and big data. Machines will be connected to one another, all over, communicating, speaking to one another. And big data. But the big data is the microphone off. Big data is the one that economists actually do all these projections without any person. Space technology is another one, and it is mostly going to be affected by advances in the other four. Should I wait or should I continue? Other sub-elements of these technologies are robotics, 3D printing, and cloud computing. The jobs of the future will mainly revolve around these technologies. Jobs dealing with their development, management, sales, and application, and these will require highly specialized skills. And I hope the Open University is already directing its mind to how to mount courses that will produce these highly specialized skills. These technologies have the potential to transform every aspect of our lives. They have applications in agriculture, security, education, medicine, services, mobility, governance, and arts. The impact they could have on our lives has been described as limitless. These technologies can potentially increase productivity growth across many sectors. One of the downsides of the advances in these technologies is that they have the potential to render many current jobs obsolete. The need for human workers in certain industries will be reduced as it will become more costly and less efficient to employ actual people in certain roles. Drivers will become obsolete with the adoption of autonomous vehicles. Manufacturing and agriculture will require less human labor as automation and robotics become more advanced and cheaper. Big data and machine learning have the potential to disrupt healthcare, journalism, insurance, removing the need for many professionals in those industries, including economists whose skills in manipulating data and forecasting will be overtaken by big data computing. The list goes on. According to a World Economic Forum report on the future of jobs for Africa, it is projected that an average of 46% of jobs in Ethiopia, Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria are susceptible to automation. This number is likely to increase as the cost associated with automation falls. In fact, we have a very narrow window in labor-induced manufacturing in this country because the cost of automation is still very high. If this cost, as the trajectory shows, continues to come down, very soon, even the manufacturing sector that I am promoting will not help us in poverty reduction. So we need to act very quickly and fast. The same World Economic Report states that the current workforce is already inadequately skilled for the current jobs, according to employers who state this reason as a major business constraint. With high unemployment, underemployment, fragile employment, huge informal sector employment, and many working poor, Nigeria must be concerned about this disruptive technology. Oga MC, I thought this lecture is the main event of the day. Why is he harassing me with 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? It's the main event of the day. Should I go on? I have to finish this lecture. Yeah. However, the fourth industrial revolution will come with a host of new industries and jobs. Not just jobs in relation to the technologies mentioned above, but also jobs in creative and problem-solving industries, in precision agriculture, in deepening services in mobile banking, in 3D printing that can facilitate the construction of specialized equipment that's associated with the extractive industry, in delivery of education and health services. So, it might disrupt employment in others, but it will create employment in another set. The question is, how prepared are we to take advantage or advantages of what
may arise. Along with the changes in specific jobs will come a change in what the workplace looks like. Increased video and close collaboration technologies will reduce the need for traditional office space and 9-to-5 roles. The current COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated the possibilities around virtual meeting and conferences and e-learning. I must say that the telecommunications sector in Nigeria did not disappoint, except that coverage is not uniform across the nation and access is still limited by cost. In the future, more workers will telecommute, and coming into work will no longer be a requirement for many offices. This will increase the number of opportunities for seasonal and freelance work, as well as open up employers to a large pool of potential employees who will be able to work from anywhere around the world. This is another potential danger as well as benefit, because you can sit here and work for an American company, which is also good. But an American company can be employing all the people all over the world, and Nigeria may not have a similar capacity to do the same. But this will require not only new skills, but a new mindset, reorientation, and discipline. Working from home requires a new mindset, discipline, and a reorientation, a culture of inquiry and innovation, and a diversity of markets, but also changes in Nigeria's labor laws. Specific impacts on the poor. Artificial intelligence can be used to map where they are. That's one. Their access to water and also social and welfare enhancing resources. It will reduce the cost of household surveys. For agriculture, it can be deployed to improve the quality of soil, in detecting crop diseases, prediction of crop yields, pest control, and ultimately in using robots for harvesting. In future, it will become an important tool for the management of disasters and in directing relief to the needy more appropriately. In education, the technology can improve access to education for the poor through distance learning, where space is not a constraint, and by identifying and meeting the learning needs of children from poor parental background. This technology can also be a source of financial inclusion for the poor, and we have already seen that happening in many African countries, including Nigeria. In further examining the future of work and the effects of the fourth industrial revolution, it's important to understand the poverty dynamics of the generation whose work is being discussed. The challenge for policymakers is how to design innovative and holistic policies that prepares Nigeria's children and youth to take advantage of innovation as active participants that see opportunities where others see problems. The share of Nigerians under 20 population constitutes 50% of our population. With Nigeria's population projected to double by 2050, her youth population will be close to 300 million in 2050. Nigeria's youth population now and in the future can become an asset, but not in its raw, unprepared, uneducated form. The fourth industrial revolution will demand skills and creativity. It will demand adaptable social, behavioral, and non-repetitive cognitive skills. It will require a certain versatility and broad technical skills that are not tied to routine specific jobs. The demand for engineering skills, especially software and ICT-related engineers, will rise. But also creative writers, financial advisors, and marketing specialists, those that will be charged with selling and marketing these new technologies. But how can they be prepared if the current trend persists? Currently, 91 million Nigerians live below the poverty line. That is $1.90 per day. More than 50% of Nigeria's poor are youth, with unemployment rate as high as 53%. Without adequate skills and work experience, how can they position to benefit from the more demanding future? The future will be more demanding than now, and this is the profile of the youth. Besides the youth, what are the children? Developing skills and cognitive ability, a culture of discipline, curiosity, inquiry, and innovation starts at childhood. Yet, about 17 million Nigerian children are undernourished, stunted, and or wasted, with the highest burden of malnutrition in Africa and second highest in the world. And the link between nutrition and labor force participation and cognitive capacity has long been established. Governments that invest in quality nutrition for the under 5, particularly for the first 1,000 days from conception to age 2, will ensure huge economic benefit for their nation. So this Feed the Children program is not a joke. It should be taken quite seriously that children get a decent meal a day. If you consider that the nation is already grappling with 10.5 million children out of school, according to UNICEF, the magnitude of the problem stares you in the face. The essence of the foregoing is to give you a snapshot of the challenges that policymakers face in preparing the nation for the fourth industrial revolution, and to underscore that many dimensions of this challenge, as efforts are being made in poverty reduction in the face of future innovation disruptions. Will people see opportunities where there are problems? Certainly. Are these social problems amenable to market-induced innovation solutions? Probably. But in all, a smart government, a developmental state, and an entrepreneurial leader will be required to guide and support private sector-led initiatives and solutions. You know, there is, if you study the developmental trajectory of Israel, you begin to understand how their leaders constructed that nation. Let me quote from Professor Ricardo Hausmann. All countries have problems and constraints. But what's striking about Israel is the penchant for taking problems like the lack of water, desertification, and turning them into assets. In this case, by becoming leaders in the field of desert agriculture, drip irrigation, and desalination. In Israel, every problem becomes an asset. And their universities are regarded as centers of solutions. I have headache, I go to the university for answer. Universities are not just for teaching of students. No. For solving societal problems. How come Israel, with almost 90% desertification, is exporting food? Certainly, another quote, for nations to sustain long-term prosperity, they ultimately need good governments that foster and support a culture of innovation. Market-creating innovators can, however, light the fire, and governments can fan the flame. What skills do we need to build in Nigeria? The jobs of the future are highly skill intensive and require technical expertise, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence. They will revolve mainly around the main technologies of fourth industrial revolution. Workers in Africa need to be enabled to take advantage of these technologies and not to be rendered obsolete by them. Along with the skills and technology required to have modern education, health, and green industries, the skills Africa will need to build are in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Skills in automation, logistics, Internet of Things, and robotics to increase agricultural output as well as transition to high-tech manufacturing. Part of the reason why we are still talking about manufacturing in Nigeria is that China has moved up the ladder. Their labor is no longer cheap. So they have moved to high-tech manufacturing, trying to push down to Africa and the rest, the low-cost manufacturing. Skills needed for future for future infrastructure, design and development. and green technologies for energy and its related industries. Something else that will be critical for Nigeria, but is not mentioned as much as the more technical skills, are creative skills for the modern creative industries, professions in art, music, design, literature, and film. We need skilled professionals. These new industries will be affected by technologies mentioned earlier, but more so in a collaborative sense. Skilled human innovation combined with these technologies will enhance and improve the output of these creative industries, as well as serving to improve the technical industries as well. How do we then build these skills? Most of the strategies revolving around mitigating the effect of the fourth industrial revolution involve worker retraining, updating the skills of workers to reflect the needs of the current and future jobs landscape. The strategy for Nigeria and Africa has to be a little different. The labor force is currently made up of mostly low-skilled workers with low levels of productivity. Education systems across Nigeria, Africa are archaic and severely underfunded. Universities, as I said earlier, are not regarded, as in Israel and other advanced countries, as centers of solutions, with significant R&D and innovation roles. According to a UNDP report, only 1 in 6 African college students will graduate with a science, that's 17%, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The most, with all due respect to my son, I think he's still here, the most lucrative faculties in every university now is Faculty of Law. The admission into Faculty of Law, I think, rivals that of medicine. The JAMB score is so high. Some engineering faculties are looking for students. So we must have a policy that incentivizes people to study science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Nigeria has no single world-class engineering laboratory in any university. The curriculum is outdated and there is no inbuilt relevant practical training that aligns theory to practice. Policymakers seeking foreign investments must understand that made in Nigeria does not mean made by Nigerians. As we build the railways, are we able to maintain them or reproduce them many years from now? That's the question we must ask. I was at a conference recently in Cote d'Ivoire, and this Chinese fellow was drumming up how they are doing things everywhere in Ethiopia. And I stood up and I said, made in Africa is not the same as made by Africans. You have to acquire the skills before you can actually call yourself a transforming country. The World Economic Forum report indicates that human capital optimization, education, skills development, and deployment through the life course in Nigeria is 49% when the global average is 65, Mauritius is 65, Ghana 64, South Africa 63. There has to be a concerted effort to ensure that new entrants into the labor force are equipped with skills needed to take part in the labor market of the future. The World Economic Report puts it very succinctly. To build a pipeline of future skills, Africa's educators, including Open University of Nigeria, should design future-ready curricula that encourage critical thinking, creativity, emotional intelligence, as well as accelerate the acquisition of digital and STEM skills to match the way people will work and collaborate in the fourth industrial revolution. So this is now to look at your curriculum. You know, I used to say that if I became a vice chancellor of any university, in your first 2 years, you might not even see your department. We should build your skills in critical thinking, in mathematics. It doesn't matter what area you're studying in English. In mathematics, in statistics, in reasoning, in some philosophy. I mean, for ground you arrive at the university and the university gives you 20, 25, 30 novels to go and read and review. Let's start from there, because people can't communicate, they can't write. Whether you're an engineer or a mathematician, you must write, you must communicate. The GS of the old, they can't do it. that time somebody in primary school will be able to write a decent letter. So, and that's when we had the GS, the one that University of Nigeria championed. That's no longer enough. We need people to do comprehension. You teach PhD students and you set exams and you realize that they are failing the exam because they did not comprehend the question. Comprehension. So why are we not paying attention to it? Let's quickly move, because there's no time, the fourth industrial revolution and look at the Nigeria's innovation gap. So, if we are going to catch up, what are we doing? These are the things I've been, and then I try to look at a global measure of how nations rank in the innovation ladder. For both developed and developing countries, one of the ways to replace lost jobs and generate growth remains through innovation. And much of that innovation will come from startups. It is difficult to find a developed, emerging country that does not want more startups and greater entrepreneurship. I'm quoting from a book that I would recommend this university recommends to all of its students, written by Seno and Singer, Startup Nation, the story of the economic miracle of Israel. Very small book, readable book. I make all my students read it. It documents what everyone should do, how Israel transformed. Seno and Singer, Startup Nation, the story of the economic miracle of Israel. Another quote from the same book. The Chinese government, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of new engineers graduating in China each year, is determined to shift from, the point I was making earlier, made in China to made by China. In the next few years, we may see China leapfrog American leadership in whole industries, such as the development and manufacture of electric cars and batteries to power them. India is also becoming a science and technology powerhouse. This is not something you joke with. Science, technology, and innovation. And in this country, I remember quite frankly, a couple of years ago, many years ago, maybe 2 regimes ago, a minister was appointed Science and Technology, Minister of Science and Technology. And the people from that constituency were demonstrating. We come from an oil-rich region, and you gave us a third-rate ministry. Science and Technology is regarded as third-rate ministry, when in many countries, it's actually the Prime Minister, and sometimes in the office of the President. It has become clear that nations that have transformed, where structural change has occurred, where growth has been sustained, where gainful employment and incomes have risen, where shared prosperity has been generated and millions lifted out of poverty, are innovation economies. Economies that produce things. We were told about the story of how in China they built a 1,000-bed hospital in a week. My answer was, they didn't need to import anything. They produced everything. So they're able to quickly, if you were waiting for container to arrive and clear it at the port with the congestion, I think it would have taken 1 year. But in 1 week, they produced a hospital with 1,000 beds. Because everything is produced in Kenya. So an innovation economy is an economy that produces things. Economies that have a mastery, a command of the means, meaning technology, capability and skills of producing a range of goods and services. They are nations that are not content with things being produced in their countries. They can produce the goods themselves. To attain this status requires significant investment in innovation infrastructure of the country, both physical and human. So what is the state of Nigeria's innovation trajectory? To understand our state of preparedness for the fourth industrial revolution, I decided to examine Nigeria's ranking on the Global Innovation Index, an annual ranking of nations according to their innovation capabilities. According to the authors of this, it aims to capture the multi-dimensional facets of innovation using about 80 indicators. It ranks 131 countries around the world. In 2020, Nigeria ranked 117. In 2019, 114. In 2018, 118. In terms of innovation output, it ranked 121 in 2020. a rank lower than its ranking in 105 and 115 in 2018. Nigeria ranks 25th among the 29 lower middle income economies and 15th among the 26 economies in sub-Saharan Africa. Overall, Nigeria has not made progress. The report notes that relative to the gross domestic product, Nigerian performance is below expectations for its level of development, and Nigeria produces less innovation output relative to its innovation investments. Using these 7 pillars, Nigeria performed below average in 5 pillars when compared to other sub-Saharan Africa. And you can see the rest. From the Global Innovation Index indicator, one can appreciate clearly that institutions that generate policies that govern science, technology, and innovation are critical in determining innovation outcomes. Some of these institutions exist in Nigeria. However, these institutions need to be reorganized and refocused. By streamlining their mandate, provision of adequate funding, and a performance-driven leadership with targets. This is one issue. Like I said earlier, we have institutions, but both the leaders of these institutions and even their boards and staff may not even know their mandate, and there are no consequences for action. If Nigeria is to close the innovation gap, both the states, the federal government, and the private sector must work collaboratively. The National Economic Council, a very important agency of a government, is a good starting point for fostering this collaboration. NEC is a powerful institutional arrangement that can be used to provide incentives for states to work with the federal government on issues of the 4th Industrial Revolution. It can also be used creatively to foster regional cooperation in science and technology as a critical step in establishing an effective national system of innovation. Such incentives can include directing federal government counterpart funding and donor assistance to states that meet certain science, technology, and innovation parameters. The setting up of a national science and technology fund is overdue. When I was in government, we attempted to do this. We took certain steps, and there were really no follow-up. The setting up of a national science and technology fund, like I said, is overdue. The fund, properly set up and managed, can focus on closing the innovation gap and in supporting the adaptation of settled technology for improved productivity across sectors. It will also fund cutting-edge research. Attempts were made in the past, but the fund never took off. I have suggested in another presentation that the monies being recovered from corrupt officials can be used to create such a fund, turning a bad act into the creation of a public good. Finally, the military research and development should rise to the level where the outcome of their efforts would feed the civilian industrial complex as we have seen in Israel and elsewhere. The gaps in innovation and hence our lack of readiness for the 4th Industrial Revolution will continue to exist unless we address in a very significant way STEM education from primary school to the university and make significant investment in research and development. This in addition to encouraging market creating innovations as we saw with the telecommunication industry in Nigeria. Let me conclude. The 4th Industrial Revolution is upon us. It will come with huge benefits and adjustment costs. Our current state of preparedness, our population, and poverty dynamics present both challenges and opportunities. As was the case in the previous revolution, especially the 10th Industrial Revolution, Nigeria shall undergo a forced transition, which means whether you like it or not, the thing will be placed upon you, which is likely to affect the poor more adversely, thereby widening the income inequality. Innovation is required for growth, but this innovation must be targeted to addressing the high unemployment rate among the youth, in increasing the skills, capabilities of the poor. And we must also increase in a very significant way the domestic content of all our production processes in order to increase the job content. So it's not enough to come to assemble. The problem with assemblage is that there should be a target and a timeline when 90, 100% of the content of what you're assembling will be produced here. And that can be organized through a government that is watchful. The window for low-tech application in manufacturing is narrowing. We need to act fast. The bias on new technologies towards capital will disadvantage Nigeria as a low-skill level surplus economy. Jobs and better paying jobs should be the currency of any policy initiative if poverty reduction on a sustained basis is going to be achieved. And if workers are going to be turned into consumers of cheaper and better services, the fourth industrial revolution will unleash, because they will unleash cheaper and better products and services. Providing the environment where new technologies would align with this quality job-centric economic policy will demand the creative intervention of the state. That is the challenge our policymakers face. We are all dissatisfied. And we are all responsible for it. The student is not happy that he's not learning from his teacher, and the teacher is unhappy with the quality of the students and his or her working conditions. The patient is unhappy with the doctor, who is not relieving suffering because of his attitude, and the doctor is unhappy with our employer and the demands of society. The judge is not dispensing justice because of other motives, and because the lawyer is also not representing his clients well. Those elected to govern and legislate are not providing good governance, but we elect them over and over again. Our farmers are poor because of low yields and low overall productivity, and the scientists, researchers that are supposed to support agriculture are ill-resourced and ill-motivated. Why are we not ready for the fourth industrial revolution? Why is poverty ravaging the land? Why have we remained stunted as a nation? The answer: decisions and choices we all make. Decisions and choices we all make. When we are confronted with the quandaries of life, especially in our workplace, on what basis are the choices made? It is very easy to blame everything on leadership. Yes, the buck stops with those at the helm of affairs. But are you not in charge of your little corner? Or not so little corner? In universities, in ministries, in agencies and departments, in churches, even in mechanic workshops, in boards that you serve. On what basis are your choices and decisions made? For self or for society? What values govern these choices? Can you not create an oasis of excellence in your little corner? Every decision, every choice represents an alternative forgone. There are, therefore, costs associated with every choice, the burden of choice. Is this burden treated trivially as if the choice has no consequence? Making the right choices requires skills and, more importantly, the will. But the will must be embedded in morality, ethics, and empathy. We indulge very frequently in simplicity, informality, lazy thoughts, and do not task our minds before we make choices, because we do not care for the good of all. When a governor uses the scarce resources of his state for legacy projects or flyovers, to the neglect of the provision of quality public education and health services for the rural poor, it is a choice. When local government's funds are used for other things but the benefit of local citizens, it is a choice. We all must reassess our motives, admit our failures, and re-examine why certain things work and others don't. Going forward, let's ask for practical wisdom, in the words of Aristotle, that will allow us to moderate and educate our emotions, diminish our self-interest, to question our beliefs, have the courage to have unbiased evaluation of our roles and responsibilities. Let us go, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Chairman, and joyfully do good for our country, and contribute to nation building, and show that we truly care for all our peoples. Thank you very much.
Judging by the standing ovation, Convocation Lecturer, you can smile to the bank that you've actually executed your job frankly and without any doubt. May we all be seated, please. And may I, at this very moment, invite the Vice Chancellor for his remark. Very quickly, just before the Vice Chancellor make his remark, let me recognize the presence of some of the council members here with us on this special occasion. Let me start with a globally renowned legal luminary, and council is very pleased to have such a legal encyclopedia as one of its members. Help me to welcome Mr. A.U. Mustafa, a senior advocate of Nigeria. In similar light, let me also recognize the presence of Hajia Amina Garba Yusuf, one of the most experienced registrars in the Nigerian university system. She is also the Tambara Binji in Binji Town, Sokoto State. Let me expressly recognize Mr. Victor Antia, a very brilliant and astute politician, administrator, who understood the structure of governance, having served as two-time chairman of a local government in Cross River State, commissioner for local government and chieftaincy affairs, as well as the Commissioner for Culture and Tourism. So we're glad to have you on board. Let me invite the Vice Chancellor for his remarks, sir.
Yes, the Pro-Chancellor, members of Council of the National University of Nigeria, Deputy Vice Chancellors are present, guests, invited guests, distinguished guests that are here, my deans and directors, and of course, my predecessors in office. We've just gone through a clearly defined lecture, and one of its kind, that despite the constraints of time, Professor Sita was still able to demonstrate the essential knowledge about the topic, which is the fourth industrial revolution and poverty reduction. I had cautioned us before he started when I said, if I were to present the lecture the way I would go about it, it's going to be different. And that is what he has eloquently done. And he started with the economic growth being the fundamental issue for poverty reduction. But he cautioned us that growth, whilst being very necessary, is actually not the panacea that we all think should be for poverty reduction. And if you listen to him very well, and I think those of us in sciences and engineering will be very glad for what he has done today. Because what he has done is he directed our mind to manufacturing. And he gave examples of countries, South Korea and China, and how marvelous they were able to transform their country. Because essentially what he said, manufacturing entails mass utilization of human beings, which are going to produce economic, social order, and the economics of which he is one, through what do you call it, the circulation of funds, of money, will grow the economy. But he also provided solutions, and he started the solutions from thinking about government. He wanted our government to be smart. Then he left government and went to institutions like National University of Nigeria. And he left the National University of Nigeria and went with curriculums that if you want to produce, if you want to have the human force, the human resource that will do what you require, then you might as well concentrate on your curriculum. And that is just wonderful, because that is really what, as I was sitting beside the Pro-Chancellor, who is also very much involved in the curricular reform that is going on in Nigerian universities, he admonished me to know that the new curriculum will soon be given to the Executive Council of the Federal Government of Nigeria, and so will soon be passed. And so, in that light, they both have similar guidance to follow. But he also provided solutions. And one of it is one of the things that we have benefited, most universities have benefited, and that is that of the Science and Technology Fund. For now, we have a TED fund whose basic function has been that of infrastructure. So it wouldn't be too far away, hopefully, if we are able to garner also that particular aspect of science and technology, which will fund research exclusively. There was a part in his lecture which was very interesting to me. On page 36, he said, "We are all dissatisfied." And he said, "We are all responsible for it." Because this is a university, he went on to say, the student is not happy that he's not learning from his teacher. And the teacher is not happy with the quality of the students he has. And the teacher is also not happy with the working conditions that he or she is having to go through. So the question now is, why do we still have poverty ravaging the land? Why have we remained stunted as a nation? And the answer is just what I've just read. We are all dissatisfied human beings. But he also didn't just end there, ladies and gentlemen. He said this is based on decisions. Decisions and choices we all make. And those decisions have consequences, he said. And if I go back to what he said earlier, let's look at the three main bodies that he said should be able to solve that issue. He mentioned government. He mentioned institution. He mentioned the curriculum that they will teach in the institution. And finally, he mentioned us, the human beings. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause again to our wonderful presenter. And I'll be very glad if one of these days he's able to come back. Because I have issues to grind with him, but I'm not going to stress it today. Because as a scientist, some of the things he has espoused today are not what some of the things I will have subscribed to. But this is a public lecture, and I will give him I will not pass the burden on him for us to be able to engage in intellectual discourse. Professor Osita Ogbu, OON, the National Open University of Nigeria is extremely happy, and on behalf of the Council of the National Open University of Nigeria, I want to thank you for a well-rendered 11th public lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman of the occasion. Well, just before I invite the registrar for the presentation of plaque to the Convocation Lecturer, let me very quickly remind us that we are happy to have the representative of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC chairman here, in person of Mohammed Saleh. Saleh is the EFCC liaison officer at the National Assembly. You're most welcome. Let me invite the registrar now.
Please permit me to benefit from the existing protocol. I'd like to invite the Vice Chancellor to come forward here to do the presentation.
May I have the plate, please? May I invite Professor Sita Ogu to please come to the front. Professor Osita Ogu by demonstrating your key intellect and delivering a very wonderful lecture. I, Femi Peters, on behalf of the Council of the National Open University of Nigeria and Senate, wish to present to you this plaque for your use. Thank you very much. Oh, yes, you know what we normally do. May we invite the wife, Dr. Ogu, to please come for this presentation. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as is our custom at the National Open University of Nigeria, we do not let our guests go without a souvenir from us. And we have, just to demonstrate, we have improved on the souvenirs. And you can see what we have here. So on behalf of the Senate and management of the university, we want to give Prof this. If you see it, it's a carrier bag of the National Open University of Nigeria, and there are things inside. Not brown envelope. Things that will make you happy that you came to National Open University of Nigeria, because you are going to read. And it was just a joy to have you accompany him to this. And we are quite grateful also to provide you with this, madam. Thank you very much. Yes, you can go, please.
Registrar, sir, you shouldn't go too far because your attention is needed here for the closing ritual. But before you start just that, let me also recognize the representative of the Chief Medical Director of the Federal Medical Center here, Jabi. Today is ably represented by the Director of Training, who is Dr. Bioku Muftau. You're welcome. Registrar, sir, you may proceed with the closing ritual.
The Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of the Governing Council of National Open University of Nigeria, other members of the Governing Council here present, the Chairman of the occasion, Principal Officers of the University, our guest speaker, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to thank all of us that are gathered for this lecture. As the Vice Chancellor said, we have all listened, hope that we will translate the benefits, what we have learned, into action as time permits. We have had, and we are about to close the occasion now, and so I wish to have the pleasure to invite the Vice Chancellor to please come forward to declare the Convocation Lecture closed.
By the institution of office, as Vice Chancellor of and Chairman of this 11th Convocation Lecture, I want to declare this lecture closed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor, sir. With that, we've officially come to the end of this Convocation Lecture. But before we rise for the NOUN anthem to be followed by the national anthem and subsequently the procession of the Vice Chancellor in reverse order, let me quickly announce to us that the alumni dinner and award night and launching of 1 billion naira alumni village is due today, Friday, 25th of March, 2022. The venue is the Abuja Model Study Center, Kubwa Expressway, Dusan Alaji here in Abuja. Having said that, it's my privilege and honor at this moment to kindly request that we all be on our feet for the NOUN anthem to be followed by the national anthem. Thank you very much for finding time to join us here at this 11th Convocation Lecture, which came to an end a few minutes ago. May we remain standing as the Vice Chancellor position leaves the arena in a reverse order. This is a kind reminder that Alumni Dinner Award Night and launching of 1 billion Alumni Village is due today, Friday, 25th March 2022, 4 p.m. Venue is the Abuja Model Study Center, Kubwa Expressway, Abuja. On behalf of the management of the National Open University of Nigeria, I want to sincerely and most humbly thank you all for being part of this Convocation Lecture. We're keeping an eye to see you tomorrow for the Convocation ceremony, which will take place here and simultaneously